Well, how about that? The college football offseason lasted maybe about 24 hours until we had some of the biggest news we've had in the sport in quite some time. I'm Matt Barrie. This is the Matt Barrie Show here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. If anyone thought they were going to get a couple of days off from college football and major news, Nick Saban threw that out the window yesterday afternoon. And we thought for a minute, here's how I was thinking after Michigan beat Washington in the college football playoff national championship game in Houston. All of us who were there thought, okay, Michigan, dominant number one team in the country. The biggest question mark they have going forward is, will he or won't he? Will Jim Harbaugh depart for the NFL and leave the Michigan job open, which is a top flight job for the winningest program in college football history? That was the only thing on our radar of potentially opening up the college football coaching silly season again. And as of this taping, it's 10:43 on Thursday, 10:43 a.m. Thursday morning. We don't know the status of Jim Harbaugh, but what we do know is that college football was rocked on Wednesday afternoon when Nick Saban, after 17 years as head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, abruptly retired. Our Chris Lowe at ESPN was the first to have it. Saban and Alabama would put out a statement later in the afternoon. And I say stunned because the timing of when it happened. He waited until after the college football playoff national championship game. By all reports that we read yesterday, he was still working. He was on an SEC coaches call earlier in the day. He was still trying to fill vacancies on his staff yesterday afternoon, and then decided he was done. Now, within the sport, you guys know I have Paul Feinbaum on this show quite a bit. Paul, on one of our episodes earlier in the year, I can't recall when it was, maybe late September, early October, we were talking about how Nick Saban purchased a home here in Palm Beach. I say here in Palm Beach because I'm down here in West Palm right now, in Palm Beach, right across the Intercoastal. And he thought that maybe that was a sign that Nick Saban had perhaps gotten closer to the fact that he thought that he wanted to step away from college football. You could laugh, you could look and say, but his stories came out yesterday afternoon. More and more, there were people that thought that Nick Saban, more than he ever had before, was ready to walk away from the sport. 17 years at Alabama, 6 national championships for the Crimson Tide, 7 overall in his career, one at LSU. He won 9 SEC championships in 17 years. You could use any superlative you want, but in this day and age of college football and how things have evolved throughout the years, this is the most dominating stretch of dynasty football we've ever seen. Ironically enough, the last dynasty that we saw was from Pete Carroll at USC, whose coaching tenure ended after 14 years yesterday as well with the Seattle Seahawks. But you've never seen anything like this, and I would go on record as saying that you will never see dominance like this again with where college football is. What he was able to do in those 17 years was put Alabama on a map where Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide were the standard. That's where everyone wanted to play. This is pre-NIL, pre-portal. Nick Saban was able to go out and recruit and select the players he wanted. In fact, I think there's a stretch in 13 years, there was 10 consecutive where he won the recruiting title, where Alabama for 10 consecutive seasons was the number one ranked recruiting class in the country. And the results showed national championships, 44 first-round picks, a collection of talent we may never see again consecutively in college football. And there was one point, one of the stories that Nick Saban would tell his recruits, he would literally sit in front of a recruit and say, I've got a story for you. Since I've been here, there hasn't been one recruiting class that has not been able to say that they've won a national championship here. And think about that for a minute. You can sit in a living room and say, if you come to Alabama, you will win a national championship. The proof is right there. And to me, that's what makes him so different and so dominant than everybody else. Greg McElroy said that he wanted to teach you football. You know, everybody knows Saban and thinks he was a hard ass. Well, yeah, maybe so. But he was the best and most educated hard ass of all time. and you hear the term the process. And what does that mean? Well, there's books about it. He's written about it. It's focusing on doing what you have to do individually against your individual opponent. And if you do that, the results will take care of themselves. And after 17 years, there's no doubt that Nick Saban, the way he went about it, is as good as we'll ever see again. It was a day where we thought the coaching silly season was over. As I mentioned, we were keeping an eye on Harbaugh. And now we turn our attention to what's next for Alabama. The biggest argument that I have, because the names are out there: Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian, Kalen, DeBoer, Dabo Swinney. I think I saw a list with James Franklin on it, maybe a name with Marcus Freeman. Any name that's big, Lane Kiffin, although there was a report today that McElroy on his radio show said that Lane Kiffin is out. Their athletic director, Greg Byrne, also put out a statement last night saying, unless you hear it from me, it's not true. The next time you'll hear from him is when he announces the new head coach. And so there are a couple of questions with this that I find interesting. First, how long will this take? Because where this has happened, January 10th, we've already gone through the early signing period. We've got transfer portal closed for now, except for the 30-day window that now players will get to enter because of a coaching change. And so Greg Byrne knows that Lane Kiffin, Brian Kelly, LSU, all of these other SEC programs are going to try to get in there and raid Alabama's roster before a new coach is named, which is why I believe, what's today, Thursday? I'd be stunned if this went the entire weekend. I would bet we know by the beginning of next week who the next head coach of Alabama is. And I say all of this, pardon the cell phone beep, because you have to do it now. The timing of this is Nick Saban's done everything right throughout his career. The timing of this, perhaps the one thing that wasn't handled the way the school wanted it, just because of where we are on the calendar. Now, having said that, we don't know that they didn't know this was coming earlier. You know, they hadn't already had their eyes on some of the conspiracy theories out there. Are amazing, by the way. One conspiracy theory that I read is that Saban knew this was happening. He knew his successor was going to be Dan Lanning, which is why ESPN put Dan Lanning on our national championship coverage in Houston. Look, if Lanning ends up being the guy, that could just be a coincidence, but the conspiracy theories out there are amazing. But I digress. The point I want to get to is this. The Alabama job is a top flight job because of what Nick Saban did with it. Remember in the 12 years prior to Saban getting there, how much this storied program had struggled after Gene Stallings won a national championship. And so it struggled. It wasn't Alabama under Bear Bryant and Gene Stallings, an SEC staple. You know, they're still had the houndstooth, and everybody out there thought that Alabama could be good. Nick Saban made them great. And this is why I find this hiring one of the most fascinating of our time. Because Alabama now, because of Nick Saban, 6 national titles in 17 years, the top job. You can't argue that. But which of those coaches want to come to Tuscaloosa and be the man after the man? If you're Dan Lanning, he's in his late 30s. His coaching star is on the rise. He's got everything he needs at Oregon financially. They were the first school to give him an opportunity as a head coach, and they're moving into the Big Ten. Would he want to leave that to go back to the cauldron that is the SEC? He was a GA in Tuscaloosa. He was Kirby Smart's defensive coordinator at Georgia. He can recruit. He's young. He gets it. But would he want to be the guy to leave Oregon to replace Nick Saban? Steve Sarkisian's name comes up, and rightfully so. By all indications, he impressed the staff in Tuscaloosa and impressed the administrators in Tuscaloosa when he was there at Alabama. But Texas, to me, again, take the Nick Saban angle out of it, because what he did there was otherworldly. But if you just look at the programs here and now, Texas is just as big, if not bigger nationally, has more money than Alabama in terms of an athletic department. It's going into the SEC, and Sark got them to the college football playoff. Would he want to leave to replace the guy when he's building a power at Texas. The only one that I could see, and that's kind of my point, should these coaches leave to try to follow in the footsteps? This is a fan base that's accustomed to winning double digits every year, 10, 11, 12 wins. That's all they do. What if you don't? What if you go 9-3? It gets loud. It gets really loud because of the expectations that Nick Saban has placed upon this job. Dabo Swinney, at one point 3 to 4 years ago, he was a lock to take this job. He's an Alabama alum. He was a walk-on there. Everybody knows Dabo's story. Will he even get a call now? I would bet he does. But would Dabo now leave Clemson to go to Alabama? Does Alabama still want Dabo? I've read some reports where the fan base probably wouldn't be too thrilled with that, but the fans don't make the hires. In some cases, maybe if you're Tennessee, they do. But the only guy that I could see with the name that's out there that legitimately could better his situation's Kalen DeBoer at Washington. Because Washington, all things considered, is a really, really good job. I don't believe that it's at the level of Oregon because I just don't think that they have the reach and the money that Oregon has. And so if you're Kalen DeBoer, he's 49 years old. He's an offensive wizard. He's at a program that is really, really good, that he just took to a national championship game, but is it top flight? That's a coach that I could see really, really considering this job and saying, hey, you know what? If they come to me, I'll bring my offensive acumen there. I can recruit. I can work the portal. And my star has never been higher. Now, Washington, similar to Oregon, is moving to the Big Ten. But Washington also got to the national championship and Oregon didn't. And so with coaches, you have to decide, look, any coach is going to tell you, first of all, if you don't think that these coaches are going to use this as leverage to get more money, Jimmy Sexton, super agent to the Coaching Stars, is about to get paid. And so Alabama's list is going to be the best of the best. There's no debating it. But which of those best want to leave instead of stay where they're at and build their program? And Greg Burney was at Arizona. He was an athletic director there, moved over to Alabama. His Nate Oates hiring in college basketball from Buffalo was under the radar. And looked how well that's worked out, save for some off the court stuff, but it's been a great hire. And that's what we'll have to watch. You can't underestimate the effects that the Nick Saban shadow will have on this job moving forward. Coaches, they have egos. That's who they are. It's what they are. They want to be known as the best at their job at their particular school. That ain't happening at Alabama. That thing is sealed. That's why it took so long from Bear Bryant. Gene Stallings was a Bear Bryant disciple, but that's why it took so long in between. And so this is going to be very, 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 very interesting to see where this goes. But here's what I know to be true. I am 45 years old. Saban was there for 17 years. He got hired for this job when I was doing local TV in Columbia, South Carolina. I'll never forget it. It was the Miami Dolphins head coach. Said he wasn't going to go. Hours later, he's on a tarmac in Tuscaloosa being treated like a rock star, and rightfully so. And I remember sitting there doing radio at the time, and I told my co-host, Tim Hill, I said, you watch. Nick Saban, in a matter of 2 to 3 years, is going to have Alabama competing for a national championship. And in year 3, they won it, 2009. And then from there, it went on to be the most dominant run we've seen in college football history. And so when you look at this from a college football fan's standpoint, it's not going to sink in until there's a new coach at that podium with the Coca-Cola bottle that's never unopened. It's not going to sink in until we get to the SEC media days, late summer. And it probably won't even sink in for a while when you see whoever the new coach is on the sidelines. Because as with anything, Father Time is undefeated. And you just never think. You think that this dominance is going to last forever. And you think that this coach is going to be around and these players. And we said this when Brian Kelly took the job at LSU. Well, that's a good time to do it. Nick Saban, how much longer does he have? You know, Lane Kiffin and what he's building at Ole Miss. Mike Elko now at Texas A&M. How good did that job just get? Because now every coach in the SEC, most notably in the SEC West, they don't have to deal with Nick Saban anymore. Those jobs that just came open, LSU that got filled by Brian Kelly 2 years ago, he's won 10 wins his first couple. He didn't have to compete with Nick Saban anymore. Texas A&M. What's Jimbo Fisher doing right now? Jimbo Fisher's probably sitting there going, why the hell couldn't I get the Saban news while I was still at Texas A&M? This isn't to say that there's going to be a fall off at Alabama. This is to say Alabama's not going to be who they were under Nick Saban for this sustained period of time. I mean, they were, I don't want to say falling off because they just won the SEC championship and beat the two-time defending champion in Georgia, but Georgia was the back-to-back national champion, and now Michigan is. It's been since 2017 since Alabama won a non-COVID title. They won it in 2020. So even Saban knew that it was getting difficult. And that's going to be one of the trends we watch now moving forward is, has this become a young coach's game? 72 years old, NIL, portal. Could Nick Saban have adapted? He did, and absolutely. But how much longer did he want to do it with everything going on? He'll be able to pick his career. If he wants to come do TV, do TV. If he wants to go hang out at his mansion in Palm Beach, come hang out in his mansion in Palm Beach. But it's going to be, this hiring is going to tell you about where everything is in college football because of age and everything that goes on outside of being a head coach. And so I can't wait to see where this goes. I can't wait to see who they hire. I can't wait for more stories about Nick Saban to come in and really take an opportunity. And I'll end it with this. Here's how you know he was, first of all, by the way, in 17 years avoided scandal. That's a whole other show if you want to get into that. But he really is an amazing human being when you think, I'm not doing a victory lap. I'm not announcing today that this is going to be my final season in 24. I'm not going to get into all that garbage, which he could have. And he would have deserved every second of the accolades and adulation he'd get from television networks and rivals and other coaches. He just decided it was time. And that maybe he went out exactly how he coached, disciplined. I'm out. It's over. I'm going to go hang out with Miss Terry. My 7 national championship rings to be regarded as one of the greatest of all time. But yesterday, truly, we don't get many of them, but we'll all remember where we were the day Nick Saban shocked the college football world, and for better or for worse, changed the landscape of what we're going to see over the next decade. Because Alabama football for the last 17 years has been the standard, and it'll be so interesting to see where they go from here. When they do make a hire, we will let you know on the Matt Barrie Show, ESPN College Football YouTube channel. We will get the great Paul Feinbaum at some point just to get his retrospective on Nick Saban. No one has perhaps worked as closely alongside him, although Paul is currently a TV star and working on a million things and has a million asks. We'll get him on at some point. But look, it's why we love the sport, right? I fly from Houston to the national championship Tuesday morning thinking, hey, all the coaching hires are done. Maybe Harbaugh. I'm going to go relax at my place in West Palm and enjoy some sun. Yeah. Nick Saban gave me the old off-season FU and turned the sport on its side. So we'll be right here with you. But we're just an amazing day in college football with Nick Saban after 17 years stepping down at Alabama. Appreciate you watching. Give us some comments. Let us know what you think. Maybe make a prediction of who's going to be the next hire. If I had to predict, I would say, and look, this is all speculative, as you know. I'd say Dan Lanning says no. I'd say Steve Sarkisian says no. I'd say Dabo Swinney's no longer the right fit. If I had to pick today, I would think Kalen DeBoer would be the guy that's the next head coach at Alabama. If I had to choose. This is knowing nothing on the inside, but that would be my guess. And now what happens? Washington opens. Well, who gets the Washington job? That's going to open a job. And we've got a lot to talk about here in the offseason on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Matt Barrie. Give me something I can feel. Like a cigarette.